Hello and welcome to Silicon Slope's Models of the Future Workplace series. My name is Arian Lewis, and I'm the CEO of Kiln. And I'm joined today by Jane Walters from Traeger, the head of people and culture. And we are privileged to be in this safe space, this safe place, which is provided by R0, which is a wonderful company that's helping workplaces become safer and cleaner. So go to r0.com and check them out. We're excited today to be talking about the return to the workplace and some of the important learnings that have come from the pandemic and what we all learned about working through a pandemic, which I didn't ever take a course on this in college, nor was there a podcast I could have listened to when the pandemic hit, but now there are plenty, of course. And we are privileged to be talking today about what it means to maybe even return to the workplace now that we are in that thawing phase of the pandemic, which is kind of exciting and comes with lots of questions as well. So, Jane, before we jump into the detail, would you just give us a little background on yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Arian. And it's a pleasure to be here today. I mean, this is a topic that I am certainly very excited about. I think it's been a long year, and I think many of us have adjusted and adapted. And I think we've learned a lot about, how we can maybe do business and lead teams differently that will carry into the future to make us stronger. But a little bit about my background. I've been with Traeger for about a year now, so I actually myself started in the pandemic in a leadership role.
Tell them which month, because I think that's important in the context of the pandemic.
The irony of it is I started on Friday, March 13th of 2020.
The Friday the 13th of March.
Of March, yeah. So,
Yes.
The irony, little did I know what the year ahead held for me. But, I couldn't be happier with Traeger. Prior to Traeger, I actually spent many years at Goldman Sachs leading some people teams there. And I've also spent time at Target. And my career before my career was actually at Snowbird. So I'm born and raised in Utah. I love, the outdoor community. That's what keeps me here. And so, particularly with Silicon Slopes, I love the mission of what we're doing here and helping the local community bring people back, because we just have such a vibrant workforce. And it's really exciting to me to see the growth that we've had, the growth that we've sustained through the pandemic, and where we're going to head in the future as well.
Well, your career is fascinating, from Target to Goldman to Traeger, and a stop along the way at Snowbird. I hope you're still making stops at Snowbird.
Every weekend.
Would have been very good the last couple of weekends. Let's dive into the topic. We're going to take 15 to 20 minutes here and really just try to think about what it means to return maybe to work at some point, and what we've learned about the models for the future workplace during the pandemic. So, practices or models that you have adopted as a company. What practices or models or adjustments to your culture or your people strategy have you taken that you think have been really important for getting through this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, the list goes on and on, the learnings. Like you said, there was no podcast at the beginning of this, and now there's a million. I remember the first couple weeks that we were going through this, it felt like every decision we were making was groundbreaking. We had to figure out something completely new, completely different. But honestly, a couple months in, I started to look around and realize what actually was making the biggest difference was the things that we've always known make the biggest difference for our people. It's managers who are connected to their people, both personally and professionally, who communicate with them regularly, who recognize them. It's teams who take time for small talk. It was a little bit like
That's not a normal strategy here. Team, make sure you make time for small talk. But it was very important, wasn't it?
It became more and more important. I think, we still struggle with it today. We have to remind ourselves, I think sometimes you get on a video call and it's easy to just jump right into the agenda because you miss that moment in the hallway or that moment around the table when you're waiting for the last few participants to come up. But it's important as leaders, as well as coworkers, that we look for those opportunities, whether it's one-on-one or, messaging somebody to, share some article that you found, or just giving them a call to say, I haven't talked to you in a while. And it's really that human-to-human connection is what we have found so important to keeping our teams together, productive, and motivated.
So like intentional small talk.
Intentional small talk. Yep.
I like that.
Yeah. And, and with that, I think beyond that as well, I think it's managers, being good managers. Do you know what your people are, working on a day to day? Are you still tying that back to what the team's objectives are, what the team's goals are, making sure that they as team members feel valued and recognized. And it's really easy to forget to do that when you're not next to them day to day. They're maybe not picking up on it through osmosis like they would when they're sitting, with all their coworkers. You have to be a lot more intentional about it as a manager. But those are the things that we have found to be most meaningful to our people and keeping people connected.
It's interesting because I think that I read a research study that said that managers need to be sort of allocate an additional at least 25% more time, or 25% of their time needs to be allocated to sort of individual one-on-one check-ins if your team is working from home. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's overkill? What do you think?
I think it depends on a couple things. I think it depends on one, who your people are. Some people need more, some people need less. I think it depends on what they're working on. I could see that being, a rough estimation, but I think the message I would leave with managers is don't lean on the research article and assume that's the solution. You have to remember people are an unpredictable factor, and that there's never a one size fits all when it comes to management and when it comes to these topics. So really taking the time to understand the needs of your team is really important to determining what the right ratio in your calendar is for you and your team.
Okay, so pandemic hits. What happens to your workplace strategy in, let's just say, phase one of the pandemic, for 6 months?
Well, phase one was, we're going to work from home for 2 weeks. I think us, like many companies, were optimistic.
Let's all go home, let this thing blow over.
Yep.
And we'll be back soon.
We are going to do 100% work from home.
Yeah.
The majority of our roles at Traeger, that did work for, especially, here at our Utah headquarters. We're going to go through this. I think that it worked, but I think as we settled in, we realized that we weren't running a sprint. We were actually in a marathon, and we started to have to think differently about the way that we were doing this. And that's where
it did feel like a sprint at first.
It felt like a sprint at first. It probably felt like a sprint to me, at least, Arian. I don't know about you, but maybe 6 months or so before I really, truly accepted the fact it was a marathon.
Yeah, it felt like a crisis.
Yeah.
So it was like, let's just get through this crisis together. But I don't know if any of us were thinking like marathon crisis or triathlon crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Triathlon, that's an interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's longer than a marathon.
It's longer than a marathon with multiple disciplines.
Yes.
Interesting thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was 100% work from home. I think as we started to get further into the pandemic, what I quickly realized was that wasn't going to work for everybody for multiple reasons. There's some teams that simply what they do, you just can't do it the same from home as you can from the office.
Go into that just a little more. Who do you think it didn't work for at Traeger? You don't have to name any names.
I will not name names.
But kind of just what are you talking about?
We build grills.
Yes. Beautiful grills,
with beautiful
by the way.
grills, but I don't know if anybody listening owns them. They're large. They're large. So
I'm a Traeger cooker on Sundays.
Yeah.
Talk to my wife. She loves the Traeger.
And would your wife enjoy you working on your Traeger in the living room?
Ah, okay. Now I'm following you here.
Exactly.
No, she would not.
She would not.
Yes.
I think many of our team members also kind of recognized that wasn't going to be the best move for their personal lives. So it started with that. That was the most obvious low-hanging fruit. Was you can't really work on design, build, product.
In some environments.
In your homes.
Yeah.
And so we quickly realized, there's a factor like that where we're going to have to figure out how we bring these team members back safely sooner rather than later, just so they could simply do their jobs. The second theme that started to approach, which is equally, if not more important in my mind, was mental health. You know, we have team members, as any company does, that they live alone, they're single, they don't have family. Maybe they do have family, but they have kids. You know,
Right.
maybe they just, you know, they thrive off personal connection. And I think, you know, many, if not all of us, probably had a moment in the last year where we said, you know what, I'm really lonely. I miss friends. I miss going out to dinner. I miss traveling. I miss experiences. And I'm just frankly sick of being at home.
Sure.
And so it was really
Yes.
important to us that we were able to come up with solutions that enabled people to choose an option that worked for them and their job and their personal lives.
Can you give
but that
some
was also going to be
examples?
safe.
Because I think this is interesting.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, an example that I would give is we reworked our workspace so that anybody who wanted to come in was able to come in and have a safe place to sit and work.
Did they come in?
They did. Yep, we had a small number at first, and we've seen an increase in those over the past, you know, probably since the beginning of the new year. I think it's
What percentage of your team is now working in the office?
Oh, that's a great question. You know what,
You can just finger weather it.
a
You know?
finger weather, you know, maybe 10, 15%.
Right now.
Yeah, you know, it varies. Not everybody's there every day. You know,
Okay, so it
people
could
will
be-
come in, they'll have 1 or 2 days a week, and then they'll work from home
Okay,
a
so
couple
it's
days
more
a week.
flexible.
Yeah, it's definitely more flexible. It's employee driven, it's choice driven. It's like I said, it's what do you need for your role, your personal life, you know, whatever your needs are. We've got a space where you can come and you can work safely.
Cool. Okay. Traeger made a very interesting decision in the pandemic to double down on workplace. You are building a new headquarters right downtown in a very cool old newspaper factory.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes, it's where it's a newspaper printing shop is what it used to be.
Okay. It is cool, by the way. Just so you know, I have actually seen the inside of this thing. It was definitely a factory, and it's going to be very, very cool.
It's going to be very Traeger as
Yes,
well.
very Traeger. Oh, I like
Yeah.
that. That's exactly right. Very Traeger. Why did you do this? Doesn't it seem illogical to actually double down on workspace in the midst of a pandemic?
No, I mean for us,
It's curious.
it's curious, right? I think you're hearing a lot of companies say, and it's on the front page of many big newspapers, right? Saying, you know what, we're going to do 100% remote. We've given up our workspace entirely. Or, you know what, we're going to allow employees to work wherever they want in the world. You know, I don't think we 100% know out of the pandemic what I think it would be naive of me or any manager to say, I know 100% what my work model is going to look like 2 years from now. Just like we didn't know what our work model was going to look like at the beginning of the pandemic, this has changed us forever. But I will say one thing that's really important to us, it's community and connection. That's
Okay.
what the brand stands for. It's not just grilling.
Yes.
It's community
You
and
cook
connection.
together.
We cook together. That's one of our values.
Yeah.
Arian, thank you for helping us kind of look at the building when you stop by and sharing your thoughts on our values as well.
But it's a lovely idea.
It's a lovely idea, right?
Yeah.
I think, you know, you made a really good point when we were talking about that space to say that, you know, we want to make it a place where people can cook together because we don't want people to forget what they're doing. They're not just bending metal. They're actually bringing people together. And how you do that is you come together.
Yeah.
And
My family sits together around a table cooked by Traeger almost every Sunday.
And how has that impacted your family?
I would never want to do it remotely. I'll
You'd
just
never
say
want-
that.
Yeah, exactly.
I would never want to have a remote Traeger dinner with my family.
I mean, you could. I kind of like the idea.
It would involve a lot of Traegers, I think.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So, but you're actually building a new headquarters. You must have had some confidence in your. There was some assumption that was driving that. Is it community? Is it connection? What is it that really pushed that over the line that made you say, let's sign on the dotted line and put this money into this building?
It's the need to continue to have a space where our team can have that community and that connection because that's what the brand is. And I think that's ultimately, you know, I can't speak for every company or every employee, but I think that's ultimately, as humans, what we are all going to want to go back to in our workplace at some point. Maybe not 5 days a week to the same extent that we did before, But I think it's important for us to maintain culture of our company, to create that connectivity, to help people, become more cohesive teams, that they have a space where they can come together and do that. We've been more successful than I honestly thought we would be doing it virtually. But it's just not the same. And so to us, it was really important that, we have a long-term plan, and, we do have a long-term commitment to Salt Lake City as well, that this is where we want to be, and we want to have that space where our team can continue to come together and create that magic for, people like you and your family.
Okay. So if I were to talk to the rank and file of your organization, who may not see, they're not looking at things through the lens of the head of people and culture, what would they say they want in a workplace strategy for Traeger?
Specifically around COVID return to work safety, or specifically just more broadly?
Sure. Let's talk about return to work. What is the strategy they want short term? Let's anticipate that we'll be able to return more comfortably to work. In Utah, we think we may have vaccines out to most adults by May. So that's just coming around the corner. So short term, and then long term, what do you think they want in terms of a workplace strategy long term?
Yeah, I think in the short term, what's going to be important to getting people back in the office is them feeling safe.
Hence R0, right here behind us, everybody, r0.com. Keep going.
Yeah, so whether it's, things like the R0 or other, safety mechanisms that you can put in in place in your
the policies and
in
technologies.
Your space. Yeah, technologies. I think it's also policies, like you mentioned. It's trust in one another. We can put out policies as HR that say, don't come to work if you're sick. But I can put that policy up, and if people don't trust that the people around them are actually going to follow
Taking
that
it
policy,
seriously.
I don't think we'll see people return. And so I think it's, short term, it's people want to feel safe. And our job is to educate people about how they can create safety for themselves, how they can create safety for their coworkers and their teammates, who hopefully they care about as friends as well as coworkers. And, there's going to have to be a pretty deliberate effort to make sure that people know what measures are in place to make sure that they feel safe returning to work. Vaccines, I think, will probably play a role in that, but it's not going to be the end-all, be-all, and it's not going to be the only thing. I don't think a company can assume that you can just say, oh yeah, everybody is going to be vaccinated and we'll all return to work. There's still going to be some hesitation from some people about whether or not they will actually be safe when they return.
Okay.
So I think it's safety in the short term.
So safety is the name of the game, short term.
I think safety.
And then long term, what, if you were to encapsulate what you think your workplace strategy will be, or what your team members want it to be, what do you think that is?
I think they want a place where they can come collaborate and connect. It goes back to that same thing. And so when we design a workplace strategy, I think the challenge that we're going to have is, it's not just the safety aspect. It's saying, okay, I actually want to be there because it is a fun place. I enjoy who I'm working with. I enjoy the amenities that are available to me. I feel connected to the mission, the vision, the purpose, the results, every aspect that you can name of the business. I actually want to be there because I enjoy being there on a day-to-day basis. And I think that enjoyment comes, from the comfort of the physical space. But I think more than anything, it comes from, do you enjoy the people that you work with?
Yeah.
Do you have a positive team culture?
Yeah.
And, I would say for teams that are thinking about, like, what does the future of my workplace look like, whether that is virtual or remote, the number one thing that you want to focus on is teams that have a positive dynamic and build each other up and build the teams up around them. That's what's really going to make the difference for people. And I think you can resonate that can resonate through your physical space. But you also have to recognize we're probably going to be in a hybrid model going forward.
Okay.
And so you've got to make that, the team aspect and the team culture will help, bridge that gap into those people that are working remotely occasionally.
But you see workplace as an anchor to helping that connection and cultural connectivity
Yeah.
remain constant.
To help people
Yeah.
really have those personal connections and value each other
Interesting.
as humans and beyond coworkers. Yeah.
You know, it will be interesting. I think my candid opinion is
Yeah.
that Traeger's going to build in themselves a tremendous competitive advantage. You'll be able to keep and retain your talent in a way that you may not have been otherwise, and that
Yeah.
people will feel a sense of pride coming into a workplace that is encouraging, enabling that connection and collaboration.
Thank you. That certainly is our goal as we, continue
Yeah.
to welcome more new people into our fold.
Well, great. Well, we are at time right now. Any final thoughts? If you could have told yourself something about workplace strategy on March 13th, Jane, talking to Jane of March 13th, 2020, what would you have told Jane about what workplace strategy should look like and how it's going to change, or how your views on workplace strategy would change?
I think that what I would say is that the hybrid model works a lot better than I thought it ever would. And I am actually more excited going into the future than I thought I ever would be about the prospect of having team members that don't work in the same building in the same location as me, but still being able to, feel that culture. I think you've got to have the main kind of place where people can congregate. But, I think the human resiliency and desire to find ways to connect, if you let it come through and you give it the technology and the capacity to come through, I think it will come through. And I think we as humans, you just got to give your team members the power to exercise what they're looking for, which is connection.
I love that. That's a perfect note to end on.
Can I ask you the same question, actually? What would Arian of Kiln have said on March 13th and been surprised about?
I would have said that what may seem like a challenge or a crisis can actually turn into a wonderful point of learning and opportunity. And I felt quite, because I happen to be in the workspace business, and so I felt quite worried about what I was experiencing at that moment. But to your point, the world is becoming more modular, more flexible, and more adaptable. And now we can experiment with all sorts of hybrid models. And I think that when we place people at the center of our strategy and really what's going to work best for people, then we can really drive good business outcomes. And I think that we're going to learn a little bit more about how that all works in the coming months. But we've definitely learned that we can be adaptable.
I think that's so true. And I would just echo that. I think we always knew one size approach doesn't fit all. And before it felt like we were making adjustments for people on the fringes, but this has shown us that you really can make wholesale changes that accommodate a lot more people and make a lot more people successful and feel welcome than, we maybe realized as a society that we could, particularly for workplaces.
Well, thank you, Jane Walters, Head of People and Culture at Traeger. We're appreciative to our sponsors, in particular, R0, and we're grateful for Silicon Slopes for bringing us together to have this conversation. If you haven't smoked something on a Traeger, you're missing out in life. Go to Traeger.com. And if you want to learn more about Kiln, in particular Kiln Park City coming online, go to kiln.co, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks, Arian.